Hello, I'm Dr. Tracey Skale, bringing you today another mindful moment from Encompass Training and Consulting. Today we're talking about bipolar mania. Bipolar disorder is a complicated illness with many phases, and it's a chronic illness. It's also cyclical. So some people go in and out of different phases of the illness: depression, mania, mixed states. Today we're focusing on mania. Some people with mania have kind of a classic presentation I remember reading in textbooks when I was in medical school, of euphoria, on top of the world, zippity-doo-dah singing, you don't see a lot of that. Real life mania is often more subtle, and irritability is often a piece of this. To have true mania, you need a 1 week period of sustained elevated mood. It's not just one day I felt really, really good. And sometimes people with bipolar disorder get confused about that, because if they've been accustomed to being depressed and they now feel good for a day or two, they think they're manic. And that's not necessarily the case. It's an elevation of mood that's beyond what we would call normal. And the problem with bipolar disorder, it can adversely affect your life in many, many different ways. So it's a problem when it interferes with your relationships, your job, your way of dealing with people. That's when it becomes a problem. So, elevated mood. You need 4 of these following criteria if your mood is predominantly expansive and euphoric. 5 if your mood is predominantly irritable. And here are some of the things that we look for. Decreased need for sleep. People with mania will tell you they don't need to sleep very much at all. It's different than, wow, I can't sleep, I'm really tired, but I can't sleep. This is, I really don't need to sleep. They'll sleep very few hours and have incredible amounts of energy, and they can go for days like that. So that's something that we look for. Easy distractibility. The person is poorly focused. They have a very short attention span. They seem to, look at this, look at that, flip from topic to topic. People get confused between that and ADD situation, and that's a topic for another mindful moment at a different time, about how to distinguish between ADHD and bipolar disorder. But with mania, distractibility is definitely a key. They can't concentrate well, particularly in a person that could concentrate before, so that's something we need to look at. Grandiosity, inflated self-esteem or sense of self. This is relative to the person. In some persons, the grandiosity is huge. It might even come to psychotic proportions, that they think they have special powers, special relationships with key public officials, special relationships with God. That's to psychotic proportions. But it could just be based, compared to their baseline, a very different presentation. So, the normally quiet, reserved man in your office suddenly comes to work and he's cocky and he's overly assertive and he's challenging the boss. That might be a sign of some mania with this person, and it's a grandiosity for him. Flight of ideas. For the person experiencing flight of ideas, they would call it racing thoughts. Their thoughts are going very, very quickly in their heads, and people that have described it to me say it feels like there's a freight train going through their heads and they just can't stop it. To the observer, it feels like they are talking really fast from one topic to the next. They're really not staying on topic. In their head, they probably have a sense of where they're going, but it's really, kind of mind-boggling to the observer to see how quickly they're going from topic to topic. Activities. Increased in goal-directed activities. These are people that are very busy. They get a lot done. So in some ways, it looks like maybe this is a good thing to have this high energy. It's not. On the short term, maybe yes, this is the person that now painted their kitchen at 3 in the morning, and they had been putting it off for months, and then they painted the kitchen and they've cleaned the whole house and they've organized everything. They will burn out. This is not a good energy state to be in. It's too high. They cannot sustain it, and it always leads to some kind of negative consequence. It might also look to the observer, or the person has increased motor activity. They're very fidgety, so they're sitting in front of you and they're just moving all around. They can't sit still. They're tapping their foot. And again, different from their normal presentation. Speech. Pressured speech. They're talking really fast, or they're talking a lot more than they usually do. This is a tricky one for me because I've been known to talk fast myself, but I always think of it as somebody's talking even faster than I do. Really, if someone's presenting and they're typically a moderate speaker, and all of a sudden they can't get the words out fast enough, they're blurting things out in the meeting, they're stepping on everyone's words in the workplace, or they're in your office, they walk out, they come back in, they have something more to say. That's what we call pressured speech. And finally, thoughtlessness or risk-taking behaviors. This is what gets people with mania in big trouble. They do things that they normally might not do, and they have poor impulse control, and they take chances. Things like spend money that they don't have, and this is how people get themselves in with deep problems financially. Maybe taking other risks, such as all of a sudden engaging in gambling that they didn't do before, infidelity, some romantic indiscretions, things that really have potentially devastating consequences for them and their families. All of these are signs of mania. They're things to look for. And again, like all of these illnesses that we've been talking about in the Mindful Moment series with Encompass, these are treatable illnesses. It's people can work and thrive and lead very productive lives with bipolar mania, bipolar depression, bipolar mixed states. It's something that can be dealt with and dealt with well.